So we are at what will be the last summary of the Eightfold Path in daily life. So we've been covering this path, and last week we actually covered the last of the eight, which was right concentration. And at that point, one would think, well, you're done. We did 8. But actually, all those 8 are really to get you to what we're really doing here. In this sense, you really think of the 8 pieces of the path as the 8 factors. The 8 factors that are intertwined, that work together to really empower us to become liberated, to end our suffering, to see things as they are. The real liberation comes from wisdom. And it's that wisdom, the penetrating wisdom, to see things as they are, to really cut down to the roots of suffering and see what is the cause of the suffering, to have a direct realization of that, not an intellectual concept, but a direct experience of that. So all of everything that we've learned is really creating the conditions, putting the factors together so that we can spend some real time to really focus in and see directly what is the source of this suffering, what is the misperception. The root cause of our suffering, as we remember, is misperception. It's not seeing things as they are. Because I don't see things as they are, I really grab onto the things I like and try to avoid the things I don't like. I mean, that just makes a lot of sense, right? Wake up in the morning, I'm looking to feel good. And I'm looking to not feel bad. And so the problem is, because we don't see clearly, we keep actually creating the source of our suffering over and over and over by grabbing onto the things we like and trying to avoid the things we don't like in an unclear way. And so the 3 root causes of suffering, misperception, attachment, aversion, really help us keep perpetuating the same problems in life, and we just are conditioned, and our whole existence, this body will come and go, and we'll be in a new form, and we'll have new experiences, and they'll be clouded and conditioned. And our whole experience of the nature of reality is through this conditioning that we've had through beginningless time. And so everything that we've gone through now is really preparing us to delve deeply into what is the accurate way of phenomena. What is this accurate perception of self and the world and the way things work? So we started with this. We started with right view. So the way the path works, we need to start with an intellectual understanding of right view, how things really work, so that everything I do now can be based in at least an intellectual concept of how things actually work. So we start there with right view, and that becomes the impetus for really spiritual practice. If I'm doing things out of incorrect view, grasping and me being the center of the universe, I'm just going to create unwholesome events in my life and just keep perpetuating this. So right view is really the understanding of how things work in the world, and on a very basic level, we talk about karma, right? Karma is much more than the idea that I do something bad happens. I do something good happens. That's our sort of checkbook mentality of karma. And but really, the rich way that karma interacts in our experience is everything that we experience in life is through the lens of our karma. Everything that we experience. Whether I like this water, whether it tastes refreshing to me, how I see you, how I experience you, is all through the lens of my karma. So karma fills in and elaborates my experience on phenomenon, how I see myself and how I see you. The experience of how I see you is intertwined with the empty nature of phenomena and karma. So, I've done the analogy a lot of times. I like to think of people as water sacks. You're mostly water. I find that fascinating as I drink water. But ultimately, human beings are mostly water, a huge percent. vast majority of your body's water. So I like to think of human beings as water sacs. They have skin, they've got water. And if we look at people that way, my teacher used to teach me to look at people just as skeletons, so we see them equally. But I like the water skin thing. And now, as a water sac walks into the room, everything about that water sac that I experience is going to be through the lens of my karma. Do I find that person attractive or not attractive? Do I find that person interesting or not interesting? Do I find that person tall or short? None of those characteristics are independent and existent in that person. These qualities I'm going to experience through the lens of my karma. I might find someone attractive and you might find them not attractive. Same person, same phenomenon. So the designation of this person, we can recognize as a person. I see them, you see them. We're going to experience them differently based on our karma. We're going to experience them in a way that is relative to how I've lived my life, and their karma and the karma of Carbondale. And it's a real complicated topic when you think about all the layers of karma. But something that is very uniquely you is how we experience people, events, food, whatever. Whether we experience pleasure in them or suffering in them or sort of neutral is very uniquely us. So if I find, what was my latest tangent? Chocolate cream pie. Yeah. I had some the other night. It was great. And let me turn this on. Battery's dying. So chocolate cream pie. I, happen to like chocolate cream pie. Not everybody likes chocolate cream pie, right? It's just chocolate cream pie, but we will perceive the chocolate cream pie as delicious or not delicious or healthy or unhealthy or all these things. But our experience of that, it's not in the pie. And this goes across the gambit of things, right? Something that could be healthy for you, right? We have probably some people here that are healthy eaters. I'm not one of them. But I'm sure there are some in here. And we'd say, well, if you eat this, this is healthy. But is this healthy for everyone? And you find out, no, it's not healthy for everyone, right? Different people have different bodies and systems that work differently. So, for example, I like the strawberry one because I had a friend who was allergic to strawberries. Well, if you're allergic to strawberries are probably not very good for you. But someone who isn't, they're probably very good for them. So there's no concrete world out there that exists in a way that's independent and objective and measurable. It just doesn't exist. And this is just regular science. We don't even need Buddhists to understand that. Everything we experience is relative and subjective. That's our experience. And Buddhism is going to bring the point that my subjectivity to it, though, has a lot to do with how I've lived my life previously. I've created the karmic imprints to experience life as I do now. So this is resultant karma. Okay, this is what's happening now is resultant karma. I've created the karma already, causal imprints. And then everybody comes in and I see you a certain way and I experience you a certain way. All this is subject to change, and it will change. Believe it or not, there's people you've liked that you don't like now. And there's people you thought were attractive you no longer think are attractive. And there's likewise just the opposite. And all those things change, and they're very subjective. So as we really experience the world, we really want to understand that it's interdependent and it is in constant flux. And I am going to constantly experience it differently based on my attitudes, my previous karmic imprints, and as things arise. So whether I find something delicious or not delicious, or if I've been allergic to something, guess what? That can change. I can not be allergic to it later. That changes. All of these things change. So there's a constant flux. And we actually have some really incredible opportunities to change our whole experience of the world. Because if I change my karma, what do I change? I change the experience of the world that I'm experiencing. We have all that. And, science will tell you you can change your brain. A lot of, just proven the gray matter, the density, the neuro pathways, we can change. We can definitely just change that. That's just Western science. Buddhist point of view, all of that's really fascinating, but that's not going to liberate you. It's really cool though, right? What we can do if we want to look at root suffering is we start paying attention then to how am I interacting in the world? Am I interacting in a way that is more, first off, based in some sense of reality? And if I can, and within understanding how things work, I can start creating karmic imprints that will make a conducive environment for me to get the most meaning out of my life and ultimately liberation. That's where this Eightfold Path gets us. So it starts with the right view, to understand that what I think, do, and say matters. Everything I think, everything I say, everything I do matters. Any movement of the mind, that's karma's action, it's a movement of the mind. So everything I think creates an imprint. It's just a tape recording. It's just going all the time. Everything I think, everything I say, everything I do. Karmic imprints, we call them in Tibetan bakchaks. These seeds are imprinted. And they're at this stay in our consciousness, in the stream of consciousness, in our latency. They're latent. They're not doing much. They're just there. But when a condition arises that stimulates them, now they're manifest. So everything that we experience, all these conditions arise, and based on my imprints, pie is going to be delicious, or that person's going to be attractive, or that person's not going to be attractive, or I'm going to be agitated, or I'm going to have a pleasurable experience or not pleasurable experience. Our problem is we think that person's annoying. We think that person's a jerk. We think, this food is really delicious, especially if you cook it just this way. We think all these outer experiences are objective and independent from us, and that all of our energy is trying to rearrange those so I can feel better. When in truth, if I work my karma, everything else changes. You don't need to change anybody else. You change you, and you change your experience of everything. So it's really empowering. And we just don't work that way, though, do we? We're really hardwired the other way, based on I'm John, you're Mark, you're Jordan, and I'm different from you, and I'm very independent of you, and I'm seeing everything through a lens of me being John, and everything else out there is not John. And I have a very strong sense of John. John is like this. John has this personality. John is, this kind of person. John's not a health eater. I eat healthy sometimes. Thank God I'm married. Eat some greens. Yeah, it happens. So, because of this misperception, then, out of this is born we just keep creating karma, and the karma is just perpetuating this world that we live in and all the roots of suffering. And so, the first part is to have right view. So we have the right view. We start to understand how it works. Well, now I have a shot. I have a shot at doing things differently, experiencing things more accurately. And that's why they put it at the start. If you put it at the end, you're not going to ever get there. You have to start with understanding that there is this thing called karma, and things work a certain way. And the real source of my suffering is not you. It's here. It's not there. If I can understand that, well, I can take some steps to test it and see if this is true, see if this is right. So then we have right intention. So the right intention becomes, what's my motivation? What is my motivation? If I really want to create the conducive environment to cultivate inner peace and tranquility and a path to enlightenment, I need to have the right intention. So with that, we remembered that there's three factors, three real core intentions that transform our experience. And I'm not going to test y'all. I know you guys know it. I'm just going to say it. So we have renunciation, and we have harmlessness and goodwill. So if I'm coming from a place where I am renouncing sort of the delusion of how things appear, and the delusion that, the source of my happiness is in the chocolate pie, if I can renounce the delusion, the karmic, the defilements, I think would be a better way of that. I can come from a place of clarity, that's key to understand the empty nature of reality, the things that are, everything is impermanent, everything is ultimately unsatisfying, and there is no self that is independent and separate that doesn't change, doesn't happen. So if I can, renunciate, it's renouncing those delusions. It's renouncing, it doesn't mean you don't enjoy the pie. Enjoy the heck out of the pie. Just know that the pie is not the source of your happiness, and the delicious is not in the pie. I created the cause to have a delicious experience when I ate the pie. The pie is a condition from which my imprints arose, stimulated by the pie, and I had a delicious experience. I could have the same pie and not enjoy it. I can even be a little ill, and the last thing on earth I'd want is chocolate cream pie. Hard to imagine. But potentially it's possible. So, I know, I'm already thinking about a Whole Foods one. I had this sitting there. Now, but if I start to understand that, well, now I got a shot to live more accurately in the world, and now I can really cultivate more meaningful karmic imprints. So renunciation, harmlessness, right? To not harm anything, to really, really help people, to help living beings, to really not cause harm, and to really have an idea of goodwill towards others, really wanting people and animals and all beings to be doing well, so a sense of goodwill. So those are the opposite of grasping onto self, right? Of harmfulness and of ill will. I hope they get theirs, man. They deserve to get in trouble. And boy, who are they to have that happen? And just these kleshas that come up, that these imprints that are just awful. And if I really think that person is the source of my problem, guess what? I get pretty happy when they get something bad that happens to them. Yeah, they got that coming. Versus, there's another human being just like me who's suffering. And that we're all in a better place if none of us suffer, right? And the more good you do in the world, the better place I get to live in. And my whole experience of this isn't that anything's right or wrong. There's not good and bad in any ultimate sense. There's only good and bad in the sense of the harm that I'm doing to myself and others. Am I creating wholesome karmic imprints or unwholesome? If it's coming from a view based in reality with really an understanding about how karma works, I have a chance at creating a whole new experience by the karma that I create. So, right view, right intention. What are my motives? Am I coming from a view of making this world a better place? And in Tibetan, we're really focused on bodhicitta, the great compassion for all living beings. We're going to create some good stuff. So that's at the start. So that everything else that comes after that can be imbued with an understanding of the conditions that are necessary for us to really see clearly and make meaning in our life, make this life meaningful. So that leads us to the next step. Well, if I want to really start creating conditions, going against this habituated tendencies and this really strong we don't need any training to get angry, right? I don't think you need any training at all. We can be there in a nanosecond. But we need a lot of training to have compassion for all living beings. That's not the natural state. We don't need any training to think of me as the most important person in the room. We wake up in the morning, it's all about John, right? What do I want? What do I need to do? What's going to make me feel good? When's that coffee going to be ready? It's all about me. Don't need any training for that. I got that. But boy, we need some training to start seeing things more clearly and seeing that with the exception of one trifling person, the whole rest of the world is made up of others. Except for me, there's over 7 billion others out there. And everything I have in my life is dependent upon them. And everything I have in my life is dependent upon them. And I don't exist in a way that's independent of you in any way. There's no way I can live without air, without water, without food, without education, without clothing. Where did I get my clothing? Where did I get my food? Where did I get my, everybody else chipped in, including animals. So I live in dependence upon you. I live interdependently with you and the environment and the climate that we live in. But we don't normally think like that. I think, I'm me, this is my shirt, that's my car, I earned it. There's me and mine, there's you and yours. It's pretty hardwired. So we need to, if we want to live accurately, we need some effort to see this more clearly. And so we need to create the conditions. Those conditions start with the ethics, right? Right speech, right action, right livelihood. If I can stop creating a lot, just slinging mud on my windshield of reality, stop that. If I can just slow it down, start adding fluid to my window washer of reality. Instead of filling that thing up with mud, I can start doing some things that are meaningful. They're going to create the conditions so I can see more clearly. So I create good karma. I create positive potentials, this merit that's accumulated through my speech. So my speech, if I'm using my speech to bring people together rather than divide them, to cultivate honesty instead of lying, to stop harming people with my speech, to come from harmlessness, well, then I'm going to create a lot different environment for myself. Right actions, we covered that. So if I can, again, use my actions in a way that are not harmful, if my actions are ways that really bring goodwill and people together and help benefit for the greater good, that's going to change things. And then the right livelihood. So ultimately, the right view, right intention, take care of impurities with the mind. The ethics then, with speech, you got speech and then the actions with the body. So body, speech, and mind. We have a shot at reversing the whole cycle, because it's our body, speech, and mind that are these three gateways through which we just sling mud in this windshield of reality. I like that analogy. It just kind of works, huh? Windshield of reality. Because I'm viewing everything through my little windshield here, my experience of it. So then if we can create the ethics that provide the environment, my mind's calmer, I can see things a little more clearly, then we cultivate the concentration. The concentration of those three categories. Effort. It takes some effort. Mindfulness, and then concentration. So the idea is I really want to start with the understanding of how things work. And don't take that on blind faith. Test it. Test it. All this stuff is testing. Is this how things work? Does my attitude really have an influence on how I experience you? Or, yeah, it probably does. I bet we can test that pretty easy. But what created my attitude? And what created my experience of you? We have to kind of test these scenarios out and see, hey, I've been shifting how I've lived for the last week and being nicer and smiling at people more and not taking things as serious. And that guy who was really annoying, he's not so annoying anymore. Well, you might test that out, see if it works. Maybe it'll take longer than a week. Start with the people who are just a little annoying. So then we really set to putting the mind in a serviceable place, and that's what we covered in these last few weeks, is the effort to really start paying attention to my mind and noting when unwholesome mental states arise. If I can be, really the effort is to not allow them to arise, but when they arise, then I want to note them. When I'm agitated, I'm frustrated, I'm really ruminating on, being resentful. These mental states arise. Well, what do I do with that? So the effort to really address that and to subdue it, to see it as it is, let that go away. The effort to cultivate healthy mental states and to maintain them. So those are the four aspects of the right effort, right? Don't let unwholesome states arise. Once they arise, deal with them, get rid of them, confront them. When wholesome states aren't there, manifest them. And then the fourth one is maintain that. So we really want to have that. Being in a healthy mental state most of your time. You can do that. It takes some effort. And so it takes effort right off the bat. When I wake up in the morning, we have to remember, I am not the center of the universe. My my experience of the universe is subjective. There's a day right now that will never come again. What's the most meaningful way to live it? And what do I need to do to really cultivate merit and wisdom and live a life that's meaningful? Focus there instead of, hey, what can I do to feel good today? Man, I need some climate control on that bed. Get one of those heated little climate control pads. I've been thinking about those lately. So, the effort then to really pay attention to these states that arise and know, if I have right view, guess what? Those mental states are not you. They will come, they will go, you'll still be here. You've all been really ecstatically happy, haven't you? It ended. You've all been really sad and devastated, haven't you? It ended. But boy, when we're in it, we're really identified, aren't we? This is the worst day ever of my life. This is horrible. This is the best day ever. This is wonderful. Oh my God, this was divine. Epic. It was an epic day. And all those things came and went, and then there was a new epic day, and then a new worst day of your life, and a new best day of your life. And none of those really hold up when we look at it. Right? I have a friend, he loves to say, I've never had a bad day in my whole life. I've had a bad 5 minutes, and man, I've made that last for days. I've never had a bad day in my life. And that's kind of what we do, right? We milk it. And we exaggerate things. We don't see clearly. And so with this effort in mindfulness, right effort is really trying to cultivate and notice when my mental state's not very healthy. With mindfulness, I start noting how I'm exaggerating these things and where my real suffering's coming from. And I notice my elaboration, right? Things happen. There's a water sack, a bunch of water sacks. And everything else on that is elaboration coming from my mind. That's so-and-so. You know, that's their name. They're like this. That's the person they are, and that's how they are. And all that is elaboration from my mind. It's a nice story I tell about you. But whatever story I tell about you is not entirely true and doesn't hold up to any scrutiny, because whatever I know about you, there's different things about you. And whether I think you're a good person or a bad person, that's ridiculous. You're a person. And we've all done things that are harmful, and we've all done things that are great. And we're not those things. But we are accountable to those experiences, right? And everyone you meet is doing the best they can with what they have, and everybody you meet wants to be a good person. Everybody you meet wants to be happy. That's the nature of things. But when I, put that label on someone, I limit them. I don't see them clearly. That's the kind of person they are. They're a bad person. Oh, I love it when you say, hey, yeah, Joe's a great guy. Or Joe's a jerk. And Joe's a human being. And Joe probably does some wonderful things. And Joe's probably also done some not so wonderful things. We all have. And if we understand this, it's really important because it allows us to be compassionate with ourselves. To know that the world is messy and we're all doing the best we can, and we're going to screw up. And we're also going to do really good stuff. But each day that we set the intention to try to be a little better than yesterday, that is a measurable benefit. That's a measurable merit. Those seeds are planted and conditioning that are just amazing. Sometimes this world gets really overwhelming, and we look at stuff and we think, I can't make a difference. And I like to say, well, you can always improve yourself. And by improving yourself, you just improve the world, right? You made a difference. And we can. And we change our experience of the world as we do that. So, but in order to do this, we need a level of a mind that is serviceable and can actually attend to what we choose to attend to. That's why we meditate. We train the mind. We need to train the mind to where it can be present in our lives, to where it's not caught up in storytelling, elaboration, and that's where the mindfulness piece really comes in. It catches the elaboration. It catches the storytelling. It starts noting how I exaggerate things. It starts noting that, that was not the worst day ever. That was about 5 minutes, buddy. And it notes that. And it notes what is cultivating really healthy and beneficial tendencies, and it's noting what is unbeneficial. There's a lot of insight in mindfulness. And so if we can start getting our mind with some effort to be in a more wholesome state, to start being mindful of my elaborations and the things that I'm doing, I can really use those tools to cultivate this concentration, to start directing my mind, to be present, to be clear, to concentrate, so that I can have a mind that can see things clearly, a mind that will be focused where I choose to, and really in that teaching on this path, really talk about stilling all that cognitive activity and stilling the mind and resting in awareness and really subduing all that elaboration and bringing the mind to samadhi, a unification of the mind, a healthy, serviceable place. Now, we can't do that if I'm outside throwing mud on my windshield. It just doesn't work. In order for me to have a serviceable mind, I really need to create the conditions for that. And those conditions are how I live my life. And if I live my life more ethically and in a healthy way, I can be a lot more, create the conditions from which I can now concentrate better. So they really feed each other. And the more I can concentrate and be mindful, the more ethical I can be. Right? Not too concentrated, I'm getting caught up in storytelling and I'm creating a lot of problems. But if I can manage this, then I can start bringing this level of awareness to how I'm living my life and noting how I'm living and what's causing problems and what's creating some genuine well-being. So that takes us through the Eightfold Path, and then, now that we've arrived at this place where we can all achieve all the jhanas and can really rest in awareness and allow all that sense consciousness to dissolve into pure awareness and rest there with the clarity of mind and samadhi, now we can direct it towards the real problem. The real problem is our misperception of reality. And so now we go into insight meditation. And, at the teachings on this go to a really nice understanding that there's 3 levels of these defilements, we call it kleshas, that are in our consciousness. Root level is latency. They're there and they're latent. They're not doing anything. All those imprints, they're there. Bakchaks, what we call them. They're just there. And they are not, so that's at the base level. At the secondary level, we call manifest. They arise, right? Somebody says something and now my anger arises. I had the latency, the seed of anger was there. It's always been there. Now somebody says something and, the way I see them, my anger arises. So now I have manifest. What's the word? Defilements. It's sort of manifest defilements, kleshas. I'm using 3 different terminologies, so I want to keep it consistent here. Let's use kleshas. Okay, manifest. So they arise now as anger. So, but I still haven't done anything with my anger. I just have it. Then the transgression level is where I say it, or I hit somebody, or I do something. So you got these 3 layers of kleshas. That the root is latent. It's not really doing anything. You have manifest, and then you have transgression. So the ethics takes care of the transgression. The more ethical I am, I'm not going to react to the anger. So that gets rid of that. The concentration and mindfulness deals with the manifest level. The manifest level is I'm aware that I'm angry. I'm aware that these are wrong, but I'm not going to respond and react to that. It takes care of that. But we're still left with all the roots of our suffering. They're still in our consciousness. And the only way they can be rooted out is through wisdom. And that's where we need the direct realization, experience of phenomena, of my delusion, of how I keep trying to make things permanent that aren't permanent. I keep trying to find satisfaction in things that are unsatisfying. I think I just keep finding self in selflessness. And until I can root that out, all those seeds are still there, and so I'm not free. So the path is really to create the conditions to where I can direct my mind to directly experience the nature of phenomenon, the empty nature of reality, and start to really look at and root out and perceive directly the nature of phenomenon. And then we get liberated. Then karma is no longer, I'm free of that. I'm free of conditioned existence. I'm liberated. Now, this has been a very standard approach in all Buddhism. So what I'm teaching now is the Four Noble Truths. It's the Eightfold Path. It fits in all lineages and traditions. When we get to the wisdom piece, each tradition is going to have a different focus. So maybe from a Tibetan Buddhist point of view, it's all about bodhicitta. It's all about compassion. The great compassion, if you think about it, compassion is the desire to remove suffering. That's the whole thing. So the wisdom of compassion is how to root out suffering yourself and others. And it's the direct antidote to self. It's my thinking of others. So in Tibetan Buddhism, throughout this whole path, the motivation and intention is to liberate all living beings, to see to see you and identify my interdependence with you and my compassion for you, and to know that you suffer the same way I do, and to really cultivate that as the driving force of the path, and to imbue every realization we have on the path with bodhicitta. And in that way, they say it just makes the path so much quicker, so much more powerful. Theravadan traditions, as we go through this, are not going to emphasize that as much. They still love and care about everyone, but they're really going to be focused on the selflessness of me and how that liberates. And so when we get to this point, there's some different approaches people take based on their traditions and lineages, and they're all productive. So my approach here, seeing at the time, is that and actually we can still, in the universal, we still have one more thing we can say along these lines, because across the board, to really see things as they are, there's a very classic approach to really see that you are not you, which freaks people out sometimes. I mean, it really grasps us. And so a very classic approach is to examine and try to find yourself. Where's John? Okay, so John's made up of these sort of, whatever we say your experience of you is made up of 5 aggregates. I had 4 up there. 5 aggregates, right, that really make up our experience. We have a physical body. We have feeling. We have perception. And then there's this kind of trash bag category of mental formations, it's called, habits and conditioning, essentially. And then we have consciousness. So we have these 5 pieces. They call the 5 skandhas, or the 5 aggregates, that make up what we experience of ourself. And so a very classic approach is to examine my sense of John, and to get on John. Am I my body? You know, if my arm gets taken off, is that me over there? Or is this me? What's me? Am I my body? Am I my feelings? Am I my perceptions? Am I my mental formations? Am I my consciousness? And you start questioning, and then, am I different from any of those, or am I all of these, and can I exist without those? And what you're going to find is there's an interdependence in these things. And what is very hard to discover is, where's John in all that? Because John's a label. And John's changing all the time. And I'm not the same John I was yesterday. And I'm not we always want to go back to the person we were, or become this thing. But if you start looking for yourself, you're going to have a hard time finding yourself. So there's this very classic approach to go through the aggregates. We can also look at those experiences through the 3 marks of existence, which is a nice approach to start noting the impermanence of John and how John changes. Marks of existence. Things are impermanent. Dukkha. Things are unsatisfying. And there's no self. There's no John. There's no independent, self-existent John. Everything about John is interdependent and relative to the experience of things. And everything about me could not exist without a bunch of other conditions like air and water and food and people and clothing. And, you know, there's nothing about me that could exist independently, and there's nothing about me that doesn't change. Where's John? And whatever I think of as John changes, right? Is John, like I was really, I needed speech therapy when I was young. I couldn't speak, you know. Now I speak all the time. I think I couldn't speak. Yeah, no. Speak too damn much, really. You know, the guy who likes this kind of food or is that kind of food, you know, I'm the guy who used to live under a bridge. Now I don't live under a bridge. You know, I'm the guy that, you know, used to be a school teacher. Now I'm not a school teacher. I used to be a monk. Now I'm not a monk, you know. And am I any of those things, or are those things just labels that arise in dependence upon the circumstance and condition? And so the real piece here is that if we can start to notice and really focus on impermanence, and you'll note how things change. I was really happy yesterday. I'm not so happy right now. I was really upset yesterday. Well, I'm not so upset now. Boy, that chocolate cake or pie, left it out for a week. It's not so good anymore. Had too much of it, so not so good. You start noticing the impermanent nature of all things, and you get some realization of that, then there's a deck of cards that starts to happen. Then you go on to satisfactoriness and unsatisfactoriness. You notice about impermanence, and then it's pretty easy to start to realize you're not going to find lasting happiness in anything outside of you. It's all going to change. Everyone you meet will come and go. Every experience you have will come and go. You're not going to find a lasting happiness in that. So this deck of cards, starting with impermanence, starts to realize that dukkha exists, this unsatisfactoriness, that all these things that come in my life that I grab onto that are going to make me so happy can never do that. And often are actually the source of our suffering. And then that brings to the sense of self. Unsatisfactoriness, impermanence, and self, and find selflessness. So there's an unraveling that can take place as we start paying attention to first impermanence. And then that process starts to go. And if we look at our lives, you'll notice a lot of things have changed about you. You'll notice a lot of things have changed in your experience of the world. A lot of your beliefs have changed. A lot of everything that you've known has changed. And so we start paying attention to that. And yet we keep trying to think, I'm still me and I am like this. Whereas I'm showing up like this today in a certain way. But I'm subject to change. So having said all this, we want to bring it back to what we call two truths. Two truths. Because there is a conventional reality that exists. And this does not say that things don't exist. Things exist. I'm looking at Mark. I see you, Mark. You exist. I'm pretty clear you do. But they exist conventionally with labels in a very conventional and productive way. But they don't exist ultimately. Mark has none of these characteristics I'm imputing on him. They are not self-existent in him. And my experience of him is subjective. So there's ultimate truth where everyone and everything is empty of all of these characteristics. That's true. But on a conventional level, there's conventional truth. Yeah, I pretty much know what Mark's like. We've hung out before. He's a nice guy. He's helpful with people, and you know, he's always offering to help. And I met some guy in a store today. Mark, man, that guy, he's like the best guy in town. And true, a lot of really good things that Mark does. And I know that, and that's all conventionally true, and it's fine. So we don't want to get lost in that things don't matter when we talk about emptiness, because things do matter. And that's the whole point. Everything matters. It's not that nothing matters. Everything you think, say, and do matters. Oftentimes people have this talk and they'll think, well, what the heck? None of that's real anyway. you're just going in for a lot of mud on the windshield, and it's going to hurt. Everything matters. Everything matters. And every moment's a new moment. And every moment that you're here, you're creating the potentials of growth and liberation. So no matter what I've done before, what matters most is what I do now. What matters most is what I do now. And the more that I can bring reality into life, the more that I can cultivate some right view, some right intention, some behaviors that match that. I create the conditions from which I can cultivate a mind that's clear, a mind that is mindful, that pays attention to roots of suffering, roots of happiness, of liberation. And I can respond accordingly. And what will happen is, if I'm mindful and I'm noting these, my whole experience of life changes. And I'll just share, in my own world, it has totally changed in the last 30 years. You know, I went from a very pessimistic, angry being that was surrounded by violence and, all kinds of craziness. And, you know, today I don't need to lock my doors, and today I'm around a totally different environment. And I didn't do a whole lot to change all of you. What I did was I changed me, and then the world I changed. And, you know, even when I taught, you know, in a tough high school, I taught in a tough, what people call a tough high school in North Long Beach. Never had a problem with a kid, never had a problem with things, you know. Those things change. Things change as we change. And what happened is a very simple thing is asking the question, how can I be helpful? How can I be beneficial? And if people know that you have their best interests at heart, if you cultivate compassion, bodhicitta, in the way that you live your life, things will shift. People will see you differently. You'll see yourself differently. Kind of a funny thing I learned early on. If I did nice things, I felt good about myself. It was weird. You do good things, you feel good about yourself. Rocky, somebody should have told me that earlier. I'm sure they did, I just wasn't listening. The other major lesson there was, you know why you get speeding tickets? Because you speed, right? I never figured that one out. I just thought I got them because I was unlucky. Right? Never occurred to me. You know, if you didn't speed, you wouldn't get the ticket there, rocket scientist. That was a great revelation. So the same types of revelation happen in our daily life. If I start just saying, what seeds am I watering? Because everything you think, say, and do is planting seeds. These are seeds in our consciousness, and when they come in contact with conditions, and conditions are anything, food, people, events, my experience of them is going to be shrouded in the imprints that I've created. So everything matters, but it's never too late to plant good seeds. And everyone here in this room right now has immeasurable benefits, immeasurable. You have a rare and precious human rebirth, the hardest one to get. You have it. You have worked through innumerable lifetimes to have the life you have in the moments that you have now, to be able to cultivate a spiritual path. Very few humans have this. Out of 7 billion, very few humans have rare and precious 18 specific qualities, and you have it by virtue of being here in this room right now. Very few have it, and you have it. So the key is to not waste it. The key is to know that you right now have all the potentials for enlightenment. Always have. But now you're in a really incredible position because you have both opportunity and leisure. And by leisure, we mean you actually have time to cultivate a spiritual path. You're not spending your whole day trying to survive. You have all the conditions that are right for enlightenment. It's a rare and precious human rebirth. So, and we've created the conditions here to really flourish as a Sangha. I'm sitting here thinking we've already starting to outgrow our center, and we just got it. Yeah. Get some more chairs. And if we really grasp that, it is just an impetus to really not waste this opportunity. It's so rare and so precious. So let's keep creating the conditions to take care of each other, to live up to this precious human rebirth that we have now. And so we'll start. We'll have a new year, Losar, Tibetan New Year's, the 18th, and karmically, it's a real, there's a lot of potentials for new beginnings, and so I'm really looking forward to sharing that. Another new beginning. Every moment's a new beginning, technically. We don't want to get all hung up on days and stuff, but yeah, whenever people look at astrology and stuff, and I believe there's relevance to all that, but I always also believe that it's always a good time to do a good thing. And yeah, I don't need to look at my calendar to figure out when to be nice to somebody. And so whatever's happening in whatever condition it's arising, that's an opportunity to cultivate our path, and everything we think, do, and say has the opportunity to transform our experience. So this whole Eightfold Path, as we wrap up, brings us to the ripe conditions to really do insight, vipassana bhavana, vipassana, insight meditation, the cultivation of bhavana, of insight, and to see clearly. And whereas there's rigorous trainings on that with the direct meditative practices, as we've always encouraged, you have the opportunity to bring insight into your daily actions, to how you live your life, to how you treat your neighbor, to how I'm interacting with the people I come in contact with. And that's where we really get the juice to cultivate merit and wisdom, by how we live our lives. Because you're going to spend much more of your busy life dealing with others. And so let's make that meaningful. Make that meaningful. 7 o'clock. All right. So, yeah. So hopefully that's covered. We have wrapped up the Eightfold Path, and I'm not sure what I'll do next week. Of course, I'm rarely sure what I'll do any week, but where we're going is we have one more week where I'll be here, and then it's Losar. It's actually New Year's Eve, Losar, on the 18th, so the 2 Wednesdays from now. And so on 2 Wednesdays from now, what we'd like to do is do the Chenrei Sig practice. So we have the video from New Year's, and so everyone can do the sadhana and do a purification of body, speech, and mind. And this Saturday, as we mentioned, we'll teach the practice, so you could do it at home on your own. So if you can make it to that, everyone will receive the teaching, the sadhana, and they'll receive a DVD from my teacher teaching that practice as well. And so you can do that at home. That's a practice that I would like to start including here more frequently, that we come together, so many times, make that available. We'll see how that goes. And then after Losar, the following Wednesday, we'll begin probably the Lamrim Chenmo, Stages of Path to Alignment. Or I might start next Wednesday, we'll see. So, all right, so let's do a little dedication to dedicate the merit and wisdom that we've accumulated here today for the benefit of all beings. Let us dedicate the virtue and wisdom we've accumulated both here today and throughout our lives, both individually and collectively. We dedicate this for the benefit of all beings. May all beings be free of suffering and find lasting happiness. And may we be able to use the merit and wisdom accumulated here today and throughout our lives to purify our own minds, to cultivate all the path to enlightenment, so that we can truly be free of suffering, so we can help liberate the suffering of all beings. Thank you all so much.